Ladies and gentlemen, boys and ghouls, to all of our non-binary friends, to everyone on the spectrum and in between, welcome to another episode of The Shutter Show. My name is Ken Stacknick, and with me, as always, is my co-host,
David Marlowe.
David, how are you doing today?
Ken, I'm doing okay. I'm doing okay. I actually got a very much needed day off of work. This new scenic shop has been very interesting in that, it's the entertainment industry. So the entertainment industry being what it is out here in Los Angeles, jobs just need to kind of get done when they get done. So because of that, we literally have no schedule. In that pretty much 6 days a week, we are working 12-hour shifts back to back.
Oh, good.
Yeah, it's very exhausting. Everything hurts. Sometimes I can't sleep because my feet won't stop throbbing. So that's been interesting. It doesn't feel sustainable, but we'll see how things go. But thank God I got the day off. And yeah, I've been pretty much going through my notes for this film that we're going to discuss. And Ken, could you maybe tell me what film did the people pick for us today?
The good people of the internet chose the movie Soul Collector from 2019.
Indeed. So yeah, our film is The Soul Collector, though it was originally titled 8. The idea being that the number 8, its origins are just that of this infinite loop. Directed by Harold Holscher. And yeah, I believe they began filming in, I want to say 2018. I think, God, what was the budget for this? The budget for it must have been something like, I want to say it was 12 million. But yeah, this film itself takes place in about 1977. And I think one of the reasons why I was actually pretty gung-ho about including this on the poll was it's an original film from South Africa. And I feel like that is something that we get very few of in cinema history. I mean, and you get some really solid films out of South Africa. They don't have a large industry out there, but you get films like
District 9 or Chappie.
Yeah, District 9, Chappie, Tatsi. You get a lot of good work out of there. And so I had kind of gone up and did a little bit of research as to sort of how this film was received. And I think it has like an somewhere around like an 82 to like 78% on Rotten Tomatoes. And so did my research and everything seems like it has a solid film behind it. Behind watching this, like, I think this is going to be a very fascinating discussion because I think we're going to kind of go to film school on this one. Because while I do find this film interesting, it has a lot of problem areas. And I'm not saying that to turn people off of this, because our podcast is not about being like just picking a film and shitting on it. We want to find a reason for people to invest their time in a film. And I think this is one of those instances where you kind of have to look deeper into it. I watched this on the first run and I was a little worried about how this episode would turn out. But upon researching sort of the mythology and the history behind it, I got more interested. There's a lot to take out of this, and I feel like there's a lot of places where this film excels And I think there's a lot of places where you look at it and you'd be like, something's off, and I can't quite put my finger on what that is. So like I'm kind of, it's like, so like I'm interested, Ken, like so upon your viewing of this film, like what is your opinion of it?
Watching this film for the first time, the first thing that I'm struck with immediately, once the film is over, is that there's a bunch about South African history that I don't know, that clearly is informing what is going on in this movie, and that unfortunately is not conveyed through the movie. So I immediately know that I am on my back foot. I think there is a lot in The Soul Collector to appreciate. I think there are some really strong performances. I think the production design and locations are fantastic. The ability to invoke the era is really well done, particularly on the budget that is available. I think there's some really strong sound design here and there, and the camera in there in places I think moves very well and has a lot of intent. But I agree with you that there are also things in this movie that I wanted to see more of, or I needed more from. There were times when I felt like I needed to refer to the Wikipedia or the IMDb page, and unfortunately, at this moment, both of those are pretty lacking in information. So it was hard to get a completely fulfilling experience from this movie. But like I said, I think in particular the performance of Lazarus is fantastic. I think he has a really great charismatic aspect to it. I think he does a really good job of playing the darkness and the light. You can see why the couple befriends him, but you can also see the darkness inside of him, and I think that goes a lot to praising the performance at the center of the film.
Yeah, no, and I absolutely could not agree more. And I do apologize because I'm probably going to butcher this actor's name, and it's Tshamano Sebe, or Sebe, I think is how it's pronounced,
Mm-hmm.
who plays the character of Lazarus. So it's I would say ultimately there's a relatively decent sized cast, but it focuses primarily around four main characters, and that would be the character of Lazarus, played by Sebi, and then the character of Mary, played by Kita Luna, and then the character Mary's parents, Sarah and William, who are both played by Ingi Beckman and Garth Breitenbach. So all of them are South African natives, and the film itself taking place in 1977. It seems it's not necessarily determined where in South Africa this film takes place, but it is sort of kind of more out in the country, but near sort of an isolated South African village, which I believe is primarily I'm trying to recall the name. I think it's I want to say it's like a Zulu era village, or at least it's somewhat based in that Zulu. Or I'm gonna, again, I do apologize. I am a straight white cis male, and I'm going to mispronounce the shit out of these names, however well I might try. And it's spelled XHOSA. I believe there's a click in the pronunciation. It's like Zosa, I think is how it's pronounced. But this film and its mythological elements takes a lot from the Xhosa and the Zulu mythology. So primarily where it draws from in terms of South African mythology. Have you ever heard of the Tokoloshi?
No, I have not.
Okay. So the Tokoloshi is in this film. Where that is being drawn from is the creature that is in Lazarus's sack that he carries around with him. It's the sort of like his dead daughter that's been possessed by a demon, so to speak. How best to describe it? A Tokoloshi is, let's see, I've got, it's a dwarf like water sprite. If I could imagine a gremlin.
Okay.
That's what you would like if you looked at a drawing of Tokoloshi done by somebody from South Africa. It would look a lot like a gremlin.
Interesting. Okay.
It's like considered a mischievous and evil spirit that can become invisible by drinking water, or just swallowing a stone. There's I don't know, this film draws a lot off of these spiritual beliefs from all these different cultures in South Africa all throughout history. I want to say like it's originally the concept of this film, which I believe this was Harold Holscher's first feature film. Apparently his best friend passed away. He passed away in a horrible car accident.
Oh God. Okay.
And so one of the things that he had wondered in attending his funeral is okay, well, what happens to the souls of people who die horribly, in like just who are in tons of pain and agony? Like, what happens to their souls? And so, and he kind of did a little bit of research in this, and this is when he came into a ritual. He read up on a ritual that's incorporated into the film that is of an Umfafa origin. And it's a ritual that's performed if someone has died, say, far from home or horribly. The bodies are traditionally buried in the homestead. So it's believed that in this case, the soul may not accompany it. So people will go to see a healer. And in this film, Lazarus is a healer.
Yeah.
And Lazarus will go to an Umfafa tree and he'll take a branch. And they'll make a prayer so the soul possesses the tree branch, and then he returns to the homestead and he takes a goat and he attempts to feed the branch, which is inherited by the soul of this loved one. And if the goat does not eat the branch, the whole thing has failed and he has to start from scratch again. So he has to start the whole thing over again. And after that, once the goat has eaten it, the goat has to be sacrificed. And and if I'm not mistaken, there are two different goats. One goat they're both sacrificed. One goat is buried near the tree, and the other goat is given to the family of the deceased, and they eat the goat. So it's a very complex ritual, but I've watched a couple of interviews with Holscher, and he's pretty consistent in where he based a lot of his story from, and it was mostly from this specific ritual. He was fascinated by it and what would happen if someone, say, collected these souls. So it's the idea of like, cool, what happens if the ceremony is never finished? What happens if someone, say, just instead of that soul inheriting or inhabiting the branch, what happens if someone just collects the soul? Hence the title Soul Collector, though he originally just wanted to call it 8, but I think the US distributors wanted to change the title to Soul Collector. Pairing the little girl with Lazarus in the middle of apartheid, he thought was the best way to incorporate the history of South Africa's apartheid, which, 1977, Nelson Mandela was still in jail. It is still in full swing. So it's the idea of, if you understand that apartheid is going on right now, then the subtext is already there. It doesn't need to be overly explained to the audience. And I think one of the places that this film does really well is the energy between oh gosh, I'm blank on Mary. So between him and Mary, I thought it was unbelievable. It's just like, for one thing, the actress that plays Mary just knocks it out of the park. For one thing, she has such a look to her that is both like innocent but also wild. And so, and apparently it was between when they were casting Mary, Holscher brought out, there were two actresses that were still up for the part, and the lead actress playing Mary, what was her name again? It was Kita Luna. So they brought both actresses to the same location together to sort of chat with Holscher, and they were in the wilderness. And Kita Luna, apparently, her parents are wildlife photographers.
Mhm.
So already she knew about different species of plants and bugs, and she kind of just got onto the meeting with Holscher, and she just sort of started pointing out different species of tree to him and like all of the bugs that inhabited it. Not because she was trying to impress him, but literally because she's a kid and she's like, oh, this is cool. This is awesome. Holscher barely talked to the other kid. Like I feel so bad for this other child. He just pretty much ignored that child and was fascinated by Luna.
Mhm.
And from that point, and then of course they did some readings between him and between her and Sebe playing Lazarus. And I cannot begin to tell you how impressed I am by both how nurturing Lazarus is to Mary in this film, but also to just like at the same time, there's that sense of, yeah, something is off, but I'm kind of okay with it. Like I'm rooting, like even when I know that he's not up to anything good, I'm still kind of rooting for Lazarus because he's just a sweet man who, I think his big thing, like I think that the tagline for this film is guilt becomes a heavy burden to bear. And it's his character loses his child in an awful fire and prays to have her back. And that's when the Tokoloshi comes and inhabits her body. And so I think the mix of the mythology incorporated into both Lazarus's character as a healer and then into the creature that he carries in his sack, like I think that offers a lot to this film. And I think that's one of the places that the film itself like really shines.
Yeah, no, I mean, if nothing alone, the image of Lazarus with the sack is such a great horror image. It reminded me a lot of Basket Case. It reminded me a lot of actually Audition. The texture of the bag, I thought again was really really well chosen. The production design, and then again showing through. There's a lot. There was a lot in this movie that kind of reminded me of some of the work of Alan Parker, who can take you to locations that you have been to or have seen before, but there's always a griminess, there's always a bumpiness, a texture, there's always a rub to everything that you see on screen, where there's this tactile nature to all of his choices that makes you feel like if you ran your fingers over the walls or over the sets or over the props, that you would really feel like they would be rough. They would be worn in. So much of this movie feels lived in, and I think that is a real testament to the work that the production and the director does, because it's so easy, especially for movies that are in period pieces, for everything to come across clean and to come across as pristine and to come across as well as what it is, which is a newly made or bought prop. And I think that realness really adds a lot to making the period aspect of this bring the atmosphere to the story that is in the script there. It, like really the atmosphere of apartheid becomes part of the story.
Yes, no, I could not agree more. Now, Ken, like, I don't know, I'm curious I'm curious what you got overall from the cinematography in this. Just kind of I don't know, the overall look of the film. Like
There's a lot of really nice lighting and use of of the natural environment itself. They are definitely, I mean, I believe they shot actually in South Africa, and it definitely, or at least parts of it were. I'm not sure if everything was. The cinematography overall, I think, is very steady and even-handed, and it is not trying to be showy, where a lot of movies, when they have less on the page, will try and compensate by throwing the camera around, by doing lots of cuts, by making it very stylish and really showing off what the director can bring to the image. And I think it's a very smart choice for Soul Collector to bring a little bit more of a classic approach to this story, because it is a classic story. It is not a new spin on something. It is not an interpretation. It is, yeah, I mean, like this, whatever you want to say about the story at hand, it is an old-fashioned ghost story that you would tell around the fire. And as a result, the storytelling in this reflects that, in my opinion.
Okay. But yeah, it's because I completely agree with you. And I watched like 5 different interviews with Holscher. A lot of the interviews are very similar. It's kind of the same questions get asked and he gives the same answers, but there were a couple where I got some really good tidbits of information. One of them being that it was very important for Holscher and the cinematographer, who was David Pioneer, or Pionar, I think is how it's pronounced.
Mm-hmm.
They wanted to create that romantic classical feel, sort of along with like the use of what you were saying, like natural light, involving, they wanted to involve long zooms, keeping the camera on a tripod instead of like handheld. And then along with the gaffer, who was, what was his name? Toby Smuts. They decided to shoot a really wide lens and push the camera and lens to give them the natural light effect. So the style itself was based in and of itself on, are you familiar with Tarkovsky?
Yes.
Yes. So yeah, for those of you who don't know who Tarkovsky is, he's a Russian film director, writer.
He's like the Russian Kubrick. He's like the lazy one line description of Tarkovsky.
Yeah, and I think one of his careers too is a film theorist. So, but like a lot of his work is based in like the spiritual and metaphysical themes, and that was very much what Holscher and Pionar were going for. So they wanted to avoid touching up the images too much in post-production. So, you know, it was important for them to get the look they wanted mostly in camera. And that's something that I think I think that most people can really appreciate about this film, is that a lot of it is very natural. It's and it's because, you know, they don't have the post-production budget that a lot of American productions, or even productions in like China or South Korea might have. You know, but you can definitely see them, again, kind of like what you would say, using every part of the buffalo when it came to shooting it. But yeah, I don't know. I found it really fascinating. I think the issues that tend to come up for me in this film have more to do with 2 things. And that is, unfortunately, the writing of the dialogue and the editing. Because I cannot begin to tell you how many times it feels like this film loses track of what's happening or what happened just a couple of minutes before. Like in one of the climactic scenes where the father goes off to chase Lazarus and to save his daughter, he chases off the demon, and the demon kind of runs away. The demon never really comes back. The Tekaloshi is sort of it becomes an afterthought, and it doesn't really seem like it's addressed. And it's almost kind of like that Game of Thrones moment of, oh, sorry, we forgot this kind of situation. And I think while there's a lot of really good themes happening in this film, I feel like the dialogue itself isn't up to par with the themes happening on screen. Like, I don't know, like, I'm curious on your general take in that department.
There This film to me is a really great example of, you can see the effort that they're putting in. You can see how hard they're swinging for the fences, and unfortunately things don't quite connect, and as a result I think that's where some of this this confusion with the message kind of comes through, because yeah, there's so much good stuff going on here that when everything doesn't quite settle in, and then on top of it, when this is a movie that with its relatively still recent release, there isn't a lot of interviews, there isn't a lot of background information to kind of fill things in. I'm thinking of a movie kind of like Annihilation, where that movie can definitely feel impenetrable, or like is way ahead of you, or you just don't understand what's going on. And then you can read like a really great article by somebody like film critic Hulk that completely like opens up the movie to you, and you realize suddenly the metaphor and the symbolism that's going on, and it really makes the movie play in a way that it might not normally without that kind of context. And I mean, that was the number one thing I felt when this movie ended, was that I had questions that weren't answered. Like, I would have loved to see this movie at a festival with a Q&A where we might have been able to get some more context or get some more information from the director about what the overall intent was, or what the mythology behind some of the choices were, because they're so specific. I kind of don't buy that they're not based in something.
Yeah. I mean, because one thing I don't know, I appreciated the pairing of the little girl with Lazarus, like in the middle of apartheid, because that is the most, I thought that was a nice, subtle way to poke at the racial beast sort of sitting between these two cultures. And it's, and in that way, like the parents being at odds with each other, it could easily be a way to show that moral divide between how whites viewed apartheid and like how to push the paranoia that comes from the fear of the other. I thought that was done just fine. I wasn't constantly wondering, God, why is this couple such a bickering couple? And you're like, oh no, it's literally all the racial tension that's currently happening in this situation. It's like she doesn't want to move out to the middle of the country near this village, like this very small village, and like he goes out to the village and the people are immediately antagonistic. That was not something that confused me, because I'm like, okay, well, Lazarus is there with him, so yeah, they'd be like, hey, oh, what the hell are you, like, what are you doing here and why is he with you? Like, there's a real, like, okay, like I get that animosity, I get what's happening there. Some people felt confused by the folks in the village. Personally, I didn't feel that confusion. I mean, the only thing I didn't like about that is I almost felt like that was overexplained. I felt like there was a lot of dialogue that was too explanatory.
I mean, yeah, no, definitely. Like the parts that I had trouble wrapping my brain around were not the why is apartheid bad. It was definitely like the mythology and the specifics of this particular demon and this particular, this particular bad guy, and not, oh, why is this happening? Like, and don't get me wrong, like I understand if you're 18 and you've never cracked a book about South Africa, you might ask yourself, well, what is all this stuff that they're talking about? Why can't they just get along? And that's fine. But you should definitely look up what apartheid in South Africa is.
And if you have no idea what apartheid is or what it means, like literally the translation for apartheid is separateness. And so it's segregation in South Africa
with extra steps,
with so many extra steps. And it is just steeped in awful British colonialism and Dutch colonialism. I would take kind of like how I went into the Wailing about sort of the history between Korea and Japan. Part of me wanted to dive into the history of South Africa and apartheid that way, but there is just I'm a white dude. Like I don't have a degree in this particular topic. So I feel like it would be wrong to over explain apartheid in South Africa, because it is such a complicated situation that spans just decades and decades, going like way back before World War II and even before then. Africa is a giant continent with tons of different
You don't
nations.
say.
Yeah. You might not, for you folks, guess what? Africa's a continent. It has a lot of different countries and a lot of different types of people. Like, it's not all one same people, like a lot of weird folks like to think it is. God, some of the shit that I've heard about that is will make your head spin. But no, it's there's a lot to dive into in that topic, and I didn't think that it was appropriate for me to take that deep dive. But I think this film is subtle enough with the subject of apartheid that I think what's being talked about here is enough. And yeah, in sort of, yeah, that whole the relationship between Mary and Lazarus kind of says everything. It's sort of the youth talking to the old. And I can't get over how much I really enjoyed the performance of Lazarus. He was, I don't know, he takes one line of dialogue and makes a feast out of it. His line is when he comes up to the family to bring Mary back to her parents, and they're startled, and he's like, "I'm sorry, I didn't mean to startle you." There's so much more that he puts into that line. It could just be a throwaway line of chaos, chaos, chaos. This is what's happening. I don't know. I feel very connected to him. I feel like I want him to make it. I want him to do well. And while I walked away from this film being kind of confused by the ending, that last scene between Lazarus and Mary in limbo didn't necessarily confuse me. And there was something really touching about the sorrow that Lazarus felt in betraying Mary, who eventually throughout the film, he sees as a friend, and Mary sees him as a friend. Like, almost off the bat, like after the first scene, they trust each other.
Mm-hmm.
And deep down, he knows that he's ultimately going to betray that trust. And it's watching that conflict in his character that makes this film worth watching. So outside of the problem areas, I like the film itself sometimes not saying enough and saying too much. I think that there's something really to take from it. And I think if you do a little bit of a deep dive into this film, I think you're going to walk away glad that you did. So I don't know, Ken, what are your final thoughts on this film?
For me, this is a movie definitely worth checking out if for the central performances, if nothing else. It is a movie that it doesn't overstay its welcome. It's something. It's one of those. It is one of the reasons that I wanted to do a show about stuff that's on Shudder, because this is the kind of movie that I probably would not have gotten around to if it wasn't for a service like this, if it wasn't pushing movies like this that are new and are bringing us stories that we have not seen before. Yes, we might have seen ghost stories before, but it doesn't mean we've seen particularly this ghost story and particularly South African ghost stories before. So yeah, that was there's so much in this movie that I kind of not want to discuss, but I feel someone smarter than me can discuss. I would say the best thing about The Soul Collector is the discussions that I know I'm going to hear in the future once people check it out more.
Yeah. Now, Ken, and before we go, I want to kind of get your opinion on this. What did you think of the scares? Like, as a horror movie, overall, the scary element of it, like, what was your opinion on that?
I will say this movie gave me neither the heebies or the jeebies. This movie to me definitely had a couple of really solid jump scares. And if that's the kind of thing that works on you, this movie will, I think, catch you off guard in a couple of spots. That said, it didn't really give me a sense of dread or nihilistic fear. It didn't give me like it didn't there like there I didn't have any oh no kind of moments.
Yeah.
I didn't have any moments. It reminded me a lot of watching something like Rosemary's Baby or let me see here. It's a movie that didn't get a lot of what we'll say vocal reaction from me, but still definitely got some emotional reaction from me.
Yeah. Well, because like jumps, like, okay, like in my opinion, like the scares for the most part felt sort of cheap and tacked on. Like, I don't get me wrong, like I enjoy a good jump scare as much as the next person, but a jump scare needs to be used like in a limited way. Like otherwise it stops becoming effective and it just gets irritating. I think the creepier points of the film that maybe it starts doing a little bit better at are sort of environmental creepies, if you kind of get what I'm saying. Is like for example, when she's looking out the window and she sees something kind of off in the distance, but then it finally moves and it's somewhere where she can't see it. And it's not meant, and it's not done in a jump scary way. It's just, it's the idea of being like, you woke up in your bed and you're just kind of, your eyes are adjusting to the dark. And you notice in the corner, there's just a figure standing there. That is terrifying to me. Like
that's some of the stronger down and dirty kind of classic horror element stuff that is in this movie. But that's definitely the kind of scares that I got from this. It was always the kind of spook that's like on the edge of my periphery. That makes me feel like I've got spiders crawling on me or something like that. It's something that makes me go, but not something that makes me like scream or freak out.
Yeah. There was a Haunting at Hill House did a really good job at that, where the ghosts or the spirits were sort of haunting the background, and it served no purpose but to just be there. And it was almost like an Easter egg scare, where if you happen to catch it, you just kind of made you go, oh, that's creepy. Like I think this film could have done really well with something like that. Because the Takaloshi, the demon, gets out of the sack every once in a while and just wanders about. And I think it just sort of observes a lot. And so I think somewhere where that would have benefited was maybe, it's just kind of lurking in the background, not giving you a jump scare, but it's just there. Like that would have been much better. But anyway.
Yeah, like David Boreanaz in Buffy the Vampire Slayer.
Yeah, precisely.
Just lurking.
But yeah, so anyway, I want to wrap this up a little bit. Ken, things are crazy right now in both of our spheres. It's going to be a crazy couple of months.
Couple of weeks at least.
Yeah, at least a crazy couple of weeks. I know, like you, congratulations, by the way, you're going to be out in Hawaii doing a film.
I'm going to Hawaii for a movie. So I'll be out there for most of the month of September, and then David's getting married. I'm in that wedding, and then I have another friend who's getting married a couple weeks after that. Then my sister's getting married, and there's also the holidays. Flu season's coming up. It's a wild and crazy time. And so David and I, what we're going to be doing is we're going to be recording another episode of here in the next couple of days in order to release for you good folks sometime here in the future, and then hopefully we'll get at least one more in before the wedding there. Maybe we'll get a chance to record something in person for those few days that we will see. What we are saying, ladies and gentlemen of the internet, is that things are going to be squishy, things are going to be figured out. We won't be able to give you a regular schedule for right now, but we will be giving you content for sure. And as a result, we're not going to be doing a poll for the next episode, but the next episode we are going to be covering Joe Lynch's Everly, starring the gorgeous and amazing, talented Salma Hayek.
Exactly. And I actually watched this before Soul Collector because I watched the trailer. I'm like, I have never heard of this film ever.
Oh, it's
like,
a goodie.
Ever. Like, I've never heard of it. I've never seen the poster. I've never seen it anywhere. Like how the fuck was this a thing? And I didn't at least hear about it.
Your friends don't like you. That's the problem.
I watched it immediately.
I don't like you
and I was just kind of like, you know what? I do want to talk about this at some point. So
we should, and we're going to next week.
Yeah, this will be our next one. I'm super excited to dive into it. Ken, you're much more familiar with this film, so you'll be taking more of the helm on that one.
Mm-hmm.
But I will gladly take a bite of that feast.
All right. Well, sweet. Well, then, ladies and gentlemen of the internet, boys and ghouls, to all of our non-binary friends, to everyone on the spectrum and in between, we can't wait to see you till next week. But David, before we go, because I jumped the gun a little bit, do you have any plugs that you want to make pluggable for the good people at home?
Oh, I sure do, Ken. Everyone can follow me on my Instagram at _DW Marlowe, where I get up to my regular musings. Not only do I post things about this podcast, but I post things about my regular everyday life. And I imagine when my wedding starts coming up, you're going to see all the wedding pictures and all the fun that's going to be had. I also run our Instagram page at Shutter_show, where any announcements will be made. But yeah, Ken, what about yourself? What you got?
You can find me on Instagram and Twitter at Ken Stachnik, STACHNIK. You can find us on Twitter and on. Actually, we're on Audible now. I totally forgot. That's just something I
we're on Audible?
Yeah, we are on Audible now because my dad listens to podcasts on Audible and he was upset that he couldn't listen to us on Audible. So now we are on Audible. So listen to us on Audible. Our general ats are at Shutter Show. You can check out my dog at Freddy Potatoes on both Instagram and Twitter, although mostly on Twitter because I accidentally locked myself out of the Instagram. That's another story. Doesn't matter. It's not very important. Ladies and gentlemen,
wait.
What?
Wait, you locked yourself out of the Instagram?
Yeah, no, I forgot what the password was and I got to look it up. It's a whole thing. It's not important. David, ladies and gentlemen of the internet, good night, good luck, and most importantly, go fuck yourselves.
Get vaccinated, you fucks.